What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and I wanted to go into a couple games coming up this week just because I think they really fit narratives that we've been seeing over the last several weeks, and they're narratives that were planted in the offseason. I had actually gone into one of them and why I thought it was going to be pretty strong this year. So obviously last night we did get it wrong. I went with the Giants on the money line just because I thought it was worth a shot. Figured the public would be all over the Niners, and they probably were, to be honest. But went with the Giants. Now I realize the 13th straight win for the Niners matches up with Brock Purdy. But even still, I did it as a leg 2, so we'll be working with a leg 3. I'm not too worried about that. But there's a narrative that I noticed, and again, I'd seen it in a few games. So first off, the very first game of the season, Lions-Chiefs. Narrative was placed, a pretty heavy narrative. And it had nothing to do with the Lions, or even Mahomes, really. It was the fact that they didn't have two of their star players. And we see, without their star players, they couldn't beat the Lions. But then they beat a better Jaguars team with them, right? So, obviously that's part of the narrative that even if you have Mahomes, you're not going to be the best. But there was a group of individuals, a position, I should say, that before this season all essentially went on strike, okay? And I saw an article earlier which I found interesting. It was somebody making the case that this is why Barkley and other running backs should have got their guaranteed money up front, which I think is ridiculous. I think it's the complete opposite. He's saying he should have got paid up front, even though now he's going to not be contributing the entire year. And I get they're saying, well, now he's not going to make money all year if it's not guaranteed. You know, the man got $12 million last year in guaranteed. I think these guys would be okay if they had to spend a year rehabbing. Now, that's the narrative I want to get into. If we look at the last couple games, we had the Browns play the Steelers, and it was very evident that the Browns were going to run all over them until Chubb got hurt. And again, I'm not saying all these injuries are fake. I have my opinion on them. But Chubb gets hurt, what happens? The game completely flips around, and the Steelers win. Now what happens when we get Giants versus 49ers? We have Barkley, who's hurt, and the one running back who's not hurt and got his money, he's the top paid running back in the league, was the biggest part of the reason the Niners won. Because you can't stop the run. And they just made a point. The guy was running touchdowns. I think he caught a touchdown. They were showing how he tied Jerry Rice's record. So, really trying to show that these running backs are important. And I think the whole thing is setting up the groundwork for in the offseason when they do what they did in the NBA and normalize some kind of ridiculous $25 million a year, whatever these guys get, contract for running backs. And they do it all the time. Like I said, they just did it in the NBA. They explain why these role players need more money, and then it just goes up and up and up, which is fine. I mean, I don't think anyone's complaining about it. I'm not saying it's the best money well spent, but money's going to be spent on what people want to spend it on. So I do find it very interesting, and I think it could help us going forward. Because, again, it's not just like one or two teams. Almost every team that had one of these running backs on the list that their running back is holding out, they're not playing, they're just not winning. They might have got a lucky win, like the Colts were able to get one against the Texans. But, I mean, for the most part, the teams with the strong running backs are winning, and I really think this is going to set the precedent. They're going to say, see, this is why you got to pay your running backs. Look at McCaffrey. Look at the Giants without Barkley. And etc. Now, another narrative I've noticed, and this is one that I think ties directly in with Deion Sanders. Oh yeah, and by the way, Robinson's killing it. He's going to probably win Rookie of the Year over all three quarterbacks, just to let you guys know. But another narrative is coaching. So we've seen now, typically we don't see too many jabs at the coaching, but this year we're seeing a lot. We're seeing Russ and Sean Payton go back and forth, and they're 0-2. We're seeing them talking about firing Staley, and the Chargers are 0-2. We're seeing them talk about how Hurts is saying how the Bears' coaching is bad, they're 0-2. To me, this is, again, they're trying to do away with the old guard. The old guard being how coaches were brought up before. A lot of things have changed now, and I do believe that they're trying to get rid of a lot of coaches and bring in a new style of coach. Maybe one that's, again, more of a draw like Dion, where you're seeing the motivation there. You're not just seeing analytics and almost robotic communications. So anyway, what this means is I'll be going into most of the games, but there's a couple that I really like now. Obviously, we got Titans-Browns, and I like this game because we have no Nick Chubb. And while that might mean people are going to fade the Browns, this isn't a game where I think there's going to be a ton of money on. And it's not like the Titans have been perfect, and I think people still believe in Deshaun Watson. So that being said, I do like the Titans a lot in this game. I am going to go ahead and take the points, 3.5. Now, I would make this a leg 3 because I believe in it very much, because of the fact that, again, I think they're going to force this narrative the Browns are going to suck without Chubb, and I also believe that you have Derrick Henry on the other end, so it's a perfect contrast, just like we got with the Niners-Giants. So I would make it a leg 3, except of every team that I've picked over the years, and this is whether I believe it's real or fake. Back when I thought it was real, the same thing happened. The Titans, I just always seem to get wrong. I don't know what it is. I just always seem to pick the opposite. So I am going to make it a leg 2 most likely. I'll be locking it out in 1 second. I'm going to type it in so it'll be official. But, yeah, I'm probably going to make this one a leg 2. Now, another game I like, and it's for very similar reason, is Chargers-Vikings. Now, it's a different narrative, but I've gone into the coaching aspect. And they're really getting on Staley, saying essentially, and you can see that there's a friendship between the two on the chopping block. They really have Staley on the chopping block, and I don't think they want to have, just in my opinion, the Vikings start off 0-3. I went into how I think they're going to have a terrible year. I think they're going to finish last in the division. Maybe now that's going to be the Bears, but I'll still stick to that. And the Lions are going to win the division by a couple games. But I still think they want it where when the Vikings play the Lions, when they play other teams, they're not doing terrible. Now, you can say that same logic holds true for the Chargers, but they're going to have the Raiders and Broncos. A little bit easier, in my opinion, if you compare the teams. And I also think, like I said, they want to make sure that they show how bad coaching is not, no matter who you have, bad coaching is going to be worse than if you have bad players. So the Chargers have the worst defense in the league. I don't think they're just going to turn that around overnight. And you have guys like Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins is playing well. And I thought they were going to make him look bad this year, so I was off there. But because of the coaching narrative, and again, it's happening with a lot of teams. It's happening with the Bears. It's happening a little bit with the Eagles. Their Hurts is it's basically like a triangle between Hurts, Brown, and the coaches. It's happening with a lot of different teams. I'm hearing talks about the Browns coach, Stefanasco, whatever the hell his name is. So, and then you get the opposite. They are really, really gassing up the Dolphins coach, Mike Daniels, whatever his name is. They are really acting like this guy's the best coach, and he's a young coach. He's a coach who's like has fun with his players, like Dion. So I pay attention to those things, and those are the reasons I think that they're going to have particular teams win. But I want to go into these two games. There's going to be more Patriots, Jets, obviously. Falcons, Lions. There's going to be a lot more. Campbell's an interesting one. But I really wanted to go into the two that I thought made the most sense. So in these two games, I love the Titans to cover. Even if they don't win, there's a very good chance it's a 3-point game. So I like the Titans with the 3.5 because of the fact that they have Henry and the Browns don't have Chubb. I think they really want to make the case that this is what happens when you don't have your star running back, and this is why they were all holding out at the beginning of the year, with McCaffrey being the main guy helping them. And then secondly, I think it's basically a pick'em game, but I like Minnesota here to cover the 1. You know, you can give them the edge because they're at home, and they like to sell the narrative that teams that are at home will typically win 50-50 games. But I think it's more so because of Staley. I think he'll be the first coach fired, and I think they want to show when you have a coach who really can't move the needle at all, then the team's just going to be awful. So this year more than ever, I've noticed the coaching Even in the game with Tomlin when he played the Browns, they were talking about how he was just out coaching the Browns coach. Again, I think it's Stefanowski or something is his name. But yeah, so nothing too crazy, but those are the two picks that I really like just because of narratives that this sequence, we're just closing sequences that we started. So this was a leg 2 that did not win. And it's going to be Titans cover Browns. And again, leg 2 just means it's 2 units. So we did 1 unit on Panthers cover Falcons. That didn't happen. So now we got the Titans for 2 units. And again, the whole goal was just to close it by leg 3. So we're not hitting at an 80% clip. We can hit at even a 40% clip and be very profitable, which is what we did last year. And then we had Jags beat Chiefs. That did not happen. So for this one, I'm going to go with leg 3 because I like to pick a lot. Vikings to cover the Chargers. Now, typically, I would play the money line. Normally, I wouldn't, but this year it's been pretty crazy where the money line has. We just got clipped on a 1.5 point game. This one here, Falcons cover Packers. They won by exactly 1. But since the line is exactly 1, the worst case we would push. I have no problem, just to save some juice, playing the -1. But there's going to be a lot of games this year that are -2, -1.5. Metric system that I used and it works very well. If you look at teams' record against the spread, you're never going to have a team go undefeated or winless against the spread. So last night, video, I recommended taking Georgia State, and I even explained why the money line was the better play. And they were about 220. They were about 2-1. So that was a nice hit. I don't know anything about either teams. I simply took them because Coastal Carolina was 3-0 against the spread, and Georgia State was like 1-2. And you're not going to have that many teams rolling in the week 5, 6, 5-0, 6-0 against the spread. So I'm just trying to weed those teams out. So if you didn't see that last video, I did all my college picks in that video. I might add some, and I might be changing Colorado. I really do believe Oregon will cover because I believe there's more money on Colorado covering and on the money line, and I don't think they're going to continue to pay the public. That being said, Dion's been a hard read, so I'm going to see what's said. If I have my updated pick, it'll definitely be out there by the end of tonight since the game is tomorrow. But I don't think I'm going to change it. I think I'm going to stick with my intuition. But I wanted to get these two out because I think they go hand in hand. This game is specifically, I think if the Titans rout the Browns or just beat them, I think we have a nice theory on our hands that anytime a team with a competent running back goes up against one without one, or one that's holding out, or one that's hurt, whatever the case may be, then the competent running back's going to win way more often. And it's just something that they started in the offseason. They're continuing it now with articles saying, oh, this is why these players need guaranteed money, which I think is complete backwards logic, but that's fine. And Robinson's going off. He's the one guy going off for the Falcons out of nowhere. So I do think that there's a very good chance that this is the narrative they're pushing. They already have, if you noticed, every team has a superstar quarterback essentially, and they've diluted it to the point now where you look at Herbert, who is supposed to be a great quarterback, and he's like just average. Watson, just average. So it's really interesting what they've done with the quarterbacks. I think they oversaturated the quarterbacks by giving every team a star, because now when the drafts come forward, there's really no quarterbacks to be drafted. So I expect a lot of running backs to be drafted. They talked about no running back going in the first round again, or a first overall pick. I think those kind of things might change. So yeah, nothing too crazy, but I think these narratives have to be addressed. And I really like the running back one. Again, I would have made this leg 3 if the Titans haven't been my kryptonite for a long, long time. And I like the Vikings equally, just because you could say, well, they're friends. Maybe the coach doesn't want to get the other coach fired. I don't think so. At the end of the day, the coaches themselves can't make these decisions. They're all cogs in the wheel. And I think they want Staley out. He might already know it, so they've been kind of teasing it. So I think the Chargers are going to lose until he's fired. And I have a very similar theory with the Jets and Patriots. Both have interesting things going. Is Bill going to start 0-3? That would be interesting. And, if not, are the Jets going to break the streak? So it could be really interesting either way. I am leaning Patriots, and I'll go into why. It's a little bit longer, though. So when I cover the rest of the games, I'll probably cover Patriots, and then I'll probably hit the 1s and then the 4s later. That's what I usually do. Like I said, a lot of times I try and get my 4s out around like 1:32, because if I have an idea where some of the 1 o'clock games are going, it really does help us with the 4. That's the reason I really rarely pick primetime games ahead of other primetime game, or I won't pick the Monday Night Football game tonight, because I like to see what's happening throughout the week, and then it's going to help me on Monday. So that's just how I pick. Just like Dion winning is going to be pretty interesting. If Dion wins, then obviously I'm immediately going to like the 4 other teams that he played for. But again, it's interesting. I would be really surprised if he did. Again, they've surprised us before, but I think this Hunter injury was just an excuse so they can lose and they can say, okay, well, they didn't have their guys. They probably dropped the next 2 games, and then they still play Washington. They still play UCLA. So I think a lot of people are getting lost in USC Colorado. Yes, it's a big game, but they're playing a lot of other big games that people are going to be interested in seeing. So I do think that they could just drop these 2 games, get Hunter back, and if they look competent against the teams, or even if they don't, they could lose. I have a theory that if they lose pretty bad, people say, okay, it's just hype, and then they rebound by beating Washington or UCLA, one of those teams, and then people say, oh, wow, they're not just hype. Kind of getting people back and forth, not knowing how to read. So that's just my opinion. I think it would be shocking if they won again and paid out the public. But if I see anything weird, I'll definitely put out a new video. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that suddenly the running backs are the reason these teams can't do anything, or the reason these teams are just easily winning. Again, the one guy that led the charge just happens to be about to break Jerry Rice's record, which I find very interesting. So those are my 2 picks so far. I like the Titans cover and the Vikings to cover that point. So take care and happy earnings.